Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tim and Tom's Film Nights. Today we have something special for you, a science fiction action extravaganza that will leave your mind blown and your eardrums shattered. That's right folks, we are diving headfirst into the world of G.I. Joe, the Rise of Cobra.
Yawns. Oh, great, Tom. Another one of your silly superhero movies. I don't understand what all the fuss is about.
Grins you can't deny the G.I. Joe has a certain charm to it, Timothy. Plus, it's got some big names attached to it, like Channing Tatum and Dennis Quaid.
Size. I suppose we should give it a chance, but don't expect me to be impressed. So, tell me, Thomas, what did you think of the film?
Well, Timothy, I thought it was quite an entertaining film overall. It had plenty of action, special effects, and even some humor sprinkled throughout. The story revolves around two American soldiers, Duke and Ripcord, played by Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans, respectively, who joined the G.I. Joe team after being attacked by the villainous organization called the MARS.
Military Armament Research Syndicate. Sounds more like a department store than an evil organization. And, what's with these so-called Joes? Are they supposed to be some sort of superheroes? I mean, seriously, Tom, this is just ridiculous.
Now, Timothy, you have to remember that this is only a movie. Besides, it does have a star-studded cast, including the one and only Duke Nukem himself, played by Mr. Quaid. And who can forget about the lovely Baroness, portrayed by the beautiful and talented Miss Strong?
Well, I suppose if you insist on watching this nonsense, Tom.
What did you think of the plot?
Did it make any sense at all? Or was it just a bunch of explosions and fighting?
Well, Timothy, it wasn't exactly Shakespearean drama, but it did have its moments. It revolves around the villainous organization MARS, led by the nefarious Cobra Commander, played by the always menacing Mr. Phoenix, who is trying to unleash a powerful weapon called the Cobra's venom upon the world. It's up to the G.I. Joe team, led by General Hawk, portrayed by Mr. Cockburn, to stop him and save the day.
Saving the day, huh? Well, I suppose that's what superheroes do. But seriously, Thomas, did the movie have any deeper meaning, or was it just mindless entertainment?
Oh, come on, Timothy. It's a G.I. Joe movie. Besides, sometimes we just need a break from deep-thinking dramas and want to watch some explosions and action, right?
Well, Thomas, I suppose we can't deny that there were some interesting tidbits about the production of G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra.
Did you know, for example,
that the filmmakers had to use real explosions and pyrotechnics during filming? This led to quite a few safety concerns, especially during the iconic pitfall sequence where the Joes attempt to rescue captured ARS. Scientists from an active volcano?
That's right, Timothy. The stunt team had to wear special suits designed by the same company that creates spacesuits for NASA's astronauts. And speaking of space, did you know that the set designers actually built a replica of the moon's surface on top of an abandoned nuclear silo in New Mexico? It took them months to complete and was later demolished after filming wrapped up.
Wasteful, Tom. All this money spent on making movies when there are more important things to be concerned about, like global warming. But I suppose it makes for good entertainment, right? What did you think of the special effects in this film, Thomas?
Oh, Timothy. You have to admit that the special effects were quite impressive for its time. The CG was seamless and the action sequences had us on the edge of our seats. Just imagine they used practical effects for some of the more dangerous stunts, like the aforementioned volcano scene and the epic helicopter chase through downtown Hong Kong.
Well, I suppose we can't deny that they did manage to create a sense of realism with those practical effects. But what about the characters? Did you find yourself rooting for anyone in particular, Thomas?
The characters. Well, Timothy, there are some iconic ones here, aren't there? We have Duke and Ripcord, played by Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans, respectively. They make a hilarious duo, bickering like an old married couple, but always ready to jump into action when duty calls. Then we have the sexy and deadly Baroness portrayed by the lovely Miss Strong. She's got some serious martial arts skills and isn't afraid to use them.
I suppose you're right, Tom. But what about my favorite character, General Hawk, played by Mr. Cockburn, quite fittingly, if you ask me. He's stern but fair, a true leader who knows how to motivate his team. And don't forget about the villainous Cobra commander portrayed by Mr. Phoenix. He's got a sinister plan and won't stop at nothing to achieve his twisted goal.
I almost forgot about General Hawk, Timothy. He really does bring a sense of military discipline and experience to the team. And as for Cobra Commander, he's cunning, ruthless, and just plain evil. You gotta love him, right?
Well, Thomas, as much as I tried to enjoy G.I. Joe, the Rise of Cobra, I simply couldn't find anything redeemable about it. The storyline was predictable, the acting was subpar at best, and the special effects were nothing more than mediocre CG explosions. But perhaps the biggest issue I had with this film was its complete disregard for the original G.I. Joe franchise's roots.
Oh, come on, Timothy. You can't deny that there were some cool action sequences and mind-blowing stunts in the movie. Plus, they did try to modernize the storyline a bit, appealing to a wider audience who might not be familiar with the classic G.I. Joe cartoon or toys.
I understand the need for change, Tom, but they went too far. Instead of honoring the legacy of G.I. Joe, they turned it into some sort of mindless action flick, filled with cheesy one-liners and cliché plot twists. It's like they took a beloved childhood memory, ripped out its heart, and replaced it with a soulless robotic shell.
Well, Timothy, you can't expect every remake or adaptation to be perfect. Sometimes they need to tweak the original storyline a bit to make it relevant for today's audience. Besides, some people actually enjoyed the more fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled version of G.I. Joe that this movie brought to the big screen.
But Tom, isn't the point of a remake or adaptation to pay homage to the original? To evoke nostalgia and bring fans like me back to our childhood memories? Instead, they just turned it into another generic action flick filled with explosions and barely any substance. It's like pouring Coke into a Pepsi bottle and calling it a day.
Well, Timothy, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on this one. For some of us less nostalgic folks, G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra was an exciting ride filled with non-stop action and cool effects. It might not be the most faithful adaptation, but it still managed to entertain many viewers, myself included.
All right, Tom, I'll give you that. But next time we watch a movie, let's stick to something more grounded in reality. Something that doesn't involve space travel or supernatural powers. We can always watch Star Wars another time, all right?
Well, Timothy, I can certainly understand your concerns about G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra's lack of faithfulness to the original material. However, I must say that the casting for this film was spot on. Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans were perfectly cast as Duke and Ripcord, respectively, bringing their signature comedic chemistry to the screen. And who could forget about Sienna Miller's portrayal of Baroness? Her mix of deadly skills and sexy allure made her a fan favorite for sure.
I have to agree with you there, Tom. Channing Tatum was definitely born to play Duke Nukem, and Marlon Wayans brought so much energy and humor to the role of Ripcord that it's hard not to love him. But what about Sienna Miller? She didn't quite capture the same level of intensity as the original Baroness, did she?
Well, Timothy, you have to remember that this was a reboot, so they were looking for a fresh take on these iconic characters. And I think Sienna Miller did an admirable job in her interpretation of Baroness. She brought a new level of complexity and vulnerability to the character, which worked well given the updated storyline. Plus, she looked absolutely stunning in that leather suit.
I'll give you that, Tom.
And speaking of looks,
Let's not forget about the always impressive Dennis Quaid, who played General Hawk. The man is a living testament to the fact that age is just a number. And what about the villainous Cobra Commander? He was played by none other than the legendary Joseph Gordon-Levitt, known for his incredible range as an actor.
you're right, Timothy. Dennis Quaid and Joseph Gordon-Levitt absolutely nailed their respective role. And let's not forget about Christopher Eccleston, who played Destro. His portrayal of the eccentric billionaire-turned-villain was both hilarious and menacing at the same time.
Well said, Tom. The casting for G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, certainly did not disappoint. But what about the special effects? Did you find them up to par with today's standards?
Oh, Timothy, you know how much I love a good explosion. And let me tell you, this film delivered on that front. While some of the CG was a bit dated by modern standards, overall, the visual effects held up quite well considering when it was made. The action sequences were thrilling and, immersive, with plenty of pyrotechnics to keep us entertained throughout the entire runtime.
I suppose you're right, Tom. And speaking of entertainment, let's not forget about the film's soundtrack. It featured a mix of rock anthems and orchestral scores that perfectly matched the movie's tone and pace. I still catch myself humming the ballad of G.I. Joe by Apocalyptica from time to time.
That's right, Timothy. The music was definitely one of the highlights of this film. It added an extra layer of epicness to every action sequence and emotional moment alike. And let's not forget about those iconic G.I. Joe catchphrases like, "Yo, yo, yo!" and "Cobra," eh? That became part of popular culture after the movie's release.
I can still hear them in my head now, Tom. And speaking of memorable lines, who could forget Duke Nukem's famous quote, "I love it when a plan comes together"? That line alone is enough to make this film iconic in my book.
Well said, Timothy. G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra may not be everyone's cup of tea, but there's no denying its impact on pop culture and the hearts of fans both old and new alike. It's a testament to how powerful storytelling can be when done right, even in the world of action-packed blockbusters.
I couldn't agree more, Tom. So what do you think was G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra worth watching, despite its flaws? Well, Tom, as much as I disliked G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, it did have some positive cultural impacts. Firstly, the movie revitalized interest in the G.I. Joe franchise, leading to a resurgence of merchandise and a sequel, G.I. Joe: Retaliation. Additionally, it introduced younger generations to the world of G.I. Joe, sparking nostalgia among older fans like me who grew up with the original cartoon and toys. But let's not forget about the impact on pop culture at large. The film's catchphrases and memes such as, yeah, Cobra. And of course, Duke Nukem's famous line I mentioned earlier have become staples in everyday conversations, further solidifying the movie's place in popular culture. Even though I personally found G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra to be a mediocre attempt at reviving a classic franchise, it did manage to entertain some viewers and spark conversations about the original material. So while it may not be my cup of tea, I can't deny its impact on fans both old and new alike.
Well said, Tim. And speaking of cultural contributions, let's not forget about the film's cast. Besides Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans, who brought their signature comedic chemistry to the screen as Duke and Ripcord respectively, we also had Sienna Miller as Baroness. Her interpretation of the character added a new layer of complexity and vulnerability, which I personally found refreshing given the updated storyline. And who could forget about Dennis Quaid and Joseph Gordon-Levitt? They both nailed their respective roles, proving once again that age is just a number when it comes to talent. And let's not forget about Christopher Eccleston as Destro. His eccentric billionaire-turned-villain performance was both hilarious and menacing at the same time. The entire cast truly brought these iconic characters to life, making G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, a must-watch for fans of action movies and pop culture alike.
Well, Tom, despite my initial skepticism and personal dislikes for science fiction, I can't deny that Joe. The Rise of Cobra did have some positive moments. The casting was spot on, with Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans bringing their signature comedic chemistry to the screen as Duke Nukem and Ripcord, respectively. Sienna Miller also deserves credit for her complex portrayal of Baroness, adding a new layer of complexity to the iconic character. And who could forget about Dennis Quaid and Joseph Gordon-Levitt? Their performances were simply masterful, however, as an IE. I must admit that the film's reliance on CG effects and science fiction elements may not have appealed to me personally, but hey, that's what makes art so fascinating. It's subjective. Some people love it. Some people, like myself, might find it a bit too much. In conclusion, while G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, I can understand why it has garnered a dedicated fan base. It had action, humor, and even some heartfelt moments sprinkled throughout the chaos. So if you're a fan of action-packed blockbusters with a dash of science fiction, you might want to give this one a shot.
Well said, Tim. And speaking of giving it a shot, I urge you all out there in internet land to do just that. Give G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra a chance, and let us know what you think about it in the comments section below. Whether you loved it or hated it, we want to hear from you. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more engaging discussions on your favorite films, TV shows, and other pop culture goodness. Remember, sharing is caring, so share this video with your friends and family members who might be interested in joining us for these fun-filled conversations. And lastly, don't forget to hit that like button below. It really helps us out and makes our day brighter. So thanks for joining us today, and until next time, adios, farewell, good night, and remember, Cobra. Eh?